Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy in Paris. We have a correspondent on the grounds. Amy, how's it been? How's it going over there?
Bonsoir. I'm working on my French. C'est bon. I'm getting very good at it. It's been a great tournament so far. From your eyes, there maybe has been some controversy swirl about, Wimbledon's announcement and some talk about that. The players have been asked about it in the press conferences. But being here really as a fan, from my eyes, none of that is happening. And fans here, the French crowds are talking about the French players that are doing really well. This and the Jean-Jean and the Gilles Simon, and they're really excited about the home crowd, the home team. And it's like whatever's going on with Wimbledon doesn't really register with the average fan here. So it's really great to be here just as a fan and see the Grand Slams from a close-up perspective and a different perspective than you see when you watch at home, which is also great way to enjoy a Grand Slam. But I'm just sort of less aware of the controversies that are swirling around and more aware of little details that don't really get talked about on TV.
So how is it seeing the tennis up close? I mean, also this year, all the fans are there. I mean, there aren't restrictions on attendance. So how is the whole energy of being around Roland-Garros again?
It's good. It's crowded. It's as crowded as it was before the pandemic. It's a little muted, maybe because of COVID. Anecdotally, there's just not as much alcohol for sale. And it's just the lines are a little bit longer to get wherever, if you want to buy something or if you want food or whatever. So it's not quite as festive as it has been in years past, but it is super crowded and there's a lot of interest.
When I went to Paris, I haven't been there in a few years, but I went to that tournament. I would enjoy the hot dog and the croissant and the Dijon mustard, very kind of spicy and lively. And it connected to me, like I felt like I was as close I could come to eating clay, kind of being around it. What's your French Open Roland-Garros treat food of choice?
Well, last night we were able to watch the Nadal match in Châtrier, and we actually got to go to a little reception beforehand in one of the little tented areas. And it was the Alcaraz match was on in the reception. So it was really interesting being there, and people were much more, I mean, they were watching the match and they were engaged in it, but they were much more focused on the food, which was really good. It was like classic food and champagne and all that. And it was like good applause for Alcaraz, but I was the only one in 100 people saying, great forehand, way to take that down the line, and people were just looking at me. So told me that Alcaraz hasn't quite, like, to us, he's the hottest thing going. We know his every move. We know exactly, how many sets this clay season. But to the more casual fan, albeit tennis fan, he's just now starting to register as a household name.
He's not on the radar yet of the French aristocracy, is what
right.
Well, and I think, God, here I'm talking about my hot dog. I think next time I go to Paris, I'm going to go with you, Amy, to hit the suite and have the whole, have what's going on there. It sounded like some good food. I mean, that hot dog is pretty good, but you got something else going.
Yeah, the cheeses and the desserts. I had some sort of a pistachio puff, really good French food.
Wow, I'm green with envy.
I've been in the Legends box at the US Open, one of the most impressive buffets, maybe the most impressive buffet that I've ever experienced. So Djokovic and Nadal are through to round 3. both have spent nearly identical time on court, a little bit over 4 hours. Djokovic going through Yoshi Nishioka really easily in round one. And then a tough opponent in Alex Molcan and Vida in the opposite coaching box. And the third set got a little tricky there. Djokovic was just a couple of points away from losing the third set on a few occasions, but he wins it in a tiebreak and gets through Molcan. Nadal, on the other hand, Jordan Thompson, 2-2-2 in round one. And then Corentin Moutet, 6-3, 6-1, 6-4 in the second round. So 0 sets dropped, Djokovic and Nadal. Amy, I think you've seen both of them live, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Your impressions?
You know, I think maybe the emotion might have gotten to Novak in that third set. He is a human being and he loves Marion, and it closing out the match may have been something that he lost his focus a little bit, but I thought that he has played very clean tennis, and he's like Nadal, he has maximized or minimized his time on court, and we know how important that is at a Grand Slam, particularly this Grand Slam. Unlike Alcaraz, Tsitsipas, these guys are winning in straight, so it's what they do. It's what the three do.
Well, it's the experience. It's the experience, and then it's also the non-experience of the opponents who haven't played these as many of these kind of events, as many best-of-5 matches, the whole pacing. I mean, there's a whole energy management through playing a potentially 5-set match. And obviously, Nadal and Djokovic are as good as anyone who's ever done that in tennis. And you see Nadal, though, I saw a few points in the first round in particular versus Thompson. I thought, all right, here's the Rafa Express. I mean, we labored through the clay. We saw our things. We saw this and that, and kind of the foot and take time off it. Here he is, ready to go. It's like owning slams. It reminds you of when Pete Sampras kind of stumbled through the spring, the clay, get it going a little bit on grass. Right at Wimbledon. Here I am in my house.
Yeah, I think if you are watching those Nadal matches very kind of closely and you are trying to look for, I don't know what kind of form he's in, you come away from it thinking, oh, wow, like he's there. He's really good right now. But, we know, and we've spoken about this in the past, there's just different levels of intensity that better opponents will bring. And in Thompson and Moutet, Nadal faces two underpowered opponents. They just don't have a lot of muscle. And as a result, I feel like Nadal's forehand in both matches has come out and looks like the Incredible Hulk, like the shot that is the big mean bully on the court. Now, that is a good sign that Nadal's forehand has been so overwhelming, but I'm very curious to see what it looks like in round 3 against Botic van de Zandschulp.
Does this surprise you? I just read the statistic that the average forehand speed of Rafa Nadal is 1 kilometer per hour less than Iga Swiatek's. Can you believe that?
So far, in 2 matches this week, or in what?
Yeah, in 2 matches. Yeah.
That makes me feel really.
Now the spin is significantly more. Yes. But when I was watching Rafa last night, I made some notes because I don't get to see him in person every day. And the first thing that popped out to me is how good his defense was. It wasn't actually the forehand. It was at his age, 36, this amazing ability to go back in the, and the spin, really, we think of like Rafa's forehand as being this offensive weapon, and he makes this noise, but the spin is the margin. So in a way, that's the defense. So in one stroke, his topspin forehand, he has both offense, defense, and neutral, by the way. So the defense of Nadal really, and it's deceptive because you think he's offensive, but he's also, one of the greatest defensive players ever.
Well, I think our great homework assignment is to figure out a term that transcends offense and defense. I mean, that's something other than just because, yeah, defense implies I've hit this ball, I'm about to be hurt. And your point about the spin and the height is that where exactly is Nadal in a position to be hurt by a subsequent shot? And so there's a whole dynamic going on. I wrote this story about why I think the term clay court specialist should be abolished, because it's kind of clay court tennis defines how the game is played. It's more like you say, who's a grass court specialist? And the clay court specialist is the more complete contemporary kind of player. And you look at Nadal and yeah, okay, he's way behind the court and sometimes the ball goes kind of short, but what's that mean short? The service line, and it's kind of high, and what are you going to do with that?
Well, we don't agree on the offense defense thing. I love those terms. Think they're it's very useful to try to understand what they mean on a court, but I don't know if we need to have that discussion right now.
Right.
I guess
How about neutral? Do you believe in that one?
I love neutral. Neutral's fantastic. I'm a big believer. I like the term trading.
Are you like Federer? You're from Switzerland, so you believe in neutrality? Is that kind of?
I believe in offense, defense, and neutral, Joel. I love it all. And Nadal definitely has it all. Look, the forehand and the margin, Amy, and the spin, if you ask me to minimize Nadal being great on clay to like one aspect, and I'm trying to explain to someone why the surface suits him so well, I'm probably going to that. I'm probably going to the violent, highly aggressive, yet full of margin topspin forehand.
That's offense or defense. I like that. Highly aggressive, full of margin, topspin forehand. So again, this is my quest. This is my Don Quixote-like quest to find something that transcends offense and defense, just to eventually find some language. Maybe I should talk to one of my English professors and just to find some language that transcends it, because it's so interesting how the game evolves that way, about what it really is, about what Nadal is doing out there, because it's like the same way I feel about the word steady. I don't think a tennis player is steady. I think a tennis player is some of this offense, defense, neutral, steady. What does that mean? I mean, so it's fascinating. I mean, Nadal is kind of, Bjorn Borg started 50 years ago, but Nadal's really redefined what it means to be a clay court player, a grinder, whatever, all of that.
I mean, it wasn't really Nadal's bread and butter forehand last night that was giving Moutet problems, because I watched a million of those and I thought Moutet is just getting his Rafa's forehand back. It was the point construction. When Moutet would hit his shot, that would come back off the racket of Rafa. Sometimes it would go high. Sometimes it would, take a funny bounce or whatever. It would just, one guy's best was not a problem for Nadal. So, and that's pretty much every match, so that really impressed me. But just the bread and butter topspin forehand on clay, it was not a problem. Now, I will say, every time we watch Nadal, we watch for one big thing, and that's depth on his forehand. And is Rafa putting that thing short around the service line? And Rafa has had good depth in his first two matches. And he's been moving well. I haven't seen anything with the foot.
How's the weather, Amy? Because I know you saw a night match, so maybe you could talk about that weather, but also the forecast looking ahead, because that often has Nadal implications in the clay and the bounce and the thin air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joel, you wanted me to show some legit swag that I bought. This is the official towel, which I bought last night. I love the colors, the pink.
It's nice.
Because I was freezing and it's been cold here. And my friend who came with me, Olya, we brought these little sundresses because I've been here when it's been 90 degrees and I always remember that. And it's been freezing. We've worn jeans pretty much every day. So it's cool, it's breezy, it's rainy. It's been like spitting rain almost every day. Next week, I see that it warms up, not into the 80s, like mid 70s Fahrenheit, whatever our international viewers are. Sorry, I only speak Fahrenheit.
Me too.
Then remember in the October 2020 French, and we had the whole little chat about weather and Rafa, how it was going to be a little less thin. The air was going to be a little less thin, so therefore was his ball not going to bounce as high. And was that going to trouble him? That's okay. Didn't he? I believe he won the tournament again without the loss of a set.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I maintain if it's cold and slow, that helps Nadal against Djokovic in particular. We talked about that in 2020, just with the pace generation and the power. Like, I think the heavier conditions do favor Rafa, even though if you ask Nadal in a neutral sense, like let's say you just walk up to him at a random practice session and you say, Rafa, what are your favorite conditions? He's going to say warm and lively. I just think it hurts Djokovic more than it hurts Nadal in that sense.
wait, what?
I'll say one more thing about
I think
go ahead.
I just think, Joel, if it's too slow and heavy, it becomes sometimes difficult for Djokovic to hit through and generate offense.
So he needs some thinness to generate the traction through the air.
He wants the speed, yeah, so that his forehand can get a little help. Nadal's forehand doesn't really ever need help.
The one thing I was going to say about conditions is that, and I've said this a million times, I got to hit on court 5 a couple of years ago, and it blew me away how hard the court was, how it was like a hard court in many ways. So like, I haven't seen or heard this talked about. This was just my impression. So isn't like the green True that we play on in the United States. That was Monte Carlo, because I also hit at Monte Carlo. That was more like the green True. So I read a quote from Rublev today talking about how Rublev and Medvedev have done well in this tournament so far. And Rublev said some of the courts here, a hard court. So that would benefit Novak, and it would also benefit Medvedev and Rublev.
Rublev said about some of the courts. About some of the courts, is that right?
Yeah, I don't know about Chatrier. Unfortunately, I did not get to hit on Chatrier.
Yeah, but I think there's pretty much only one court that Novak and Rafa are going to be putting their energy into, mostly as this tournament advances to play. But you're talking about the European clay and America and the hard shoe that's most common in America. I interviewed Billie Jean King a couple of weeks ago, and this is the 50th anniversary of her winning Roland-Garros for her one win here, singles win. And she said even though she'd grown up in California hard courts, the European clay was easier for her. She felt on hard shoe, she had ball bearings on her feet. You guys have played on hard shoe more than me, but she felt much harder to move on hard shoe. So I guess everyone has their deal. I don't know how
it's much harder for everyone to move on hard shoe. It's a terrible surface for moving.
No, than red clay.
Yes, it's terrible. It's terrible to move on that.
Okay.
I
agree
think
with Billie
you
Jean.
can slide on hard shoe. Can you slide? I've tried.
You can try.
Stuff at Roland-Garros, you can slide on very easily, because it's like if you can imagine the surface of a brick with some very light crushed up brick dust on it, you can slide on that. On hard shoe, there's no brick. It's like muddy almost. It's a gritty mud. Tried to slide on that. Tell me I'm wrong.
So do you East Coasters agree then with Billie Jean that, I haven't played on hard shoe that often, so I don't quite have that data sample that you two have, that hard shoe feels hard to move on?
In what way though? Is she saying it's slippery or you're stuck in it?
Ball bearings would imply slippery, right? Like
I think that Roland-Garros is more like that. But again, this is like, I may not know what I'm talking about. I feel that hard shoe is like you get stuck in it, so you can't slide on it.
And I think it's slippery. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
think there's very
Okay.
little traction.
Okay.
So I'm with BJK. I think the main headline coming out of the first two rounds, and Amy, you mentioned it, is how easily Nadal and Djokovic were able to take care of business compared to the other two favorites to win this event in Alcaraz and Tsitsipas. Time on court for Nadal and Djokovic, as I mentioned, 4 hours 11 and 4 hours 14. Djokovic slightly longer. For Alcaraz, 6 hours 24, and for Tsitsipas, 7 hours 40. So you have a pretty big difference there, especially with Stefanos just struggling in both of his opening two matches. Joel, how important do you think it is? And why do you think our three have been able to so consistently get out of this first week drama-free, boring tennis?
Meat and potatoes, business as usual. And I think for the other guys, they're being hunted. They're not as experienced. For Alcaraz and Tsitsipas, I think Tsitsipas, his matches, I was watching him today in this match where he won the first two sets against a qualifier. Was it a qualifier or just and just laboring. And I think that's kind of a little bit of his plight with the one-handed backhand. The one-handed backhand is going to force you to work harder because you got to do so much. You got to guard the one-hander. You got to use that as a shield. You got to hit big with the forehand. You got a lot of things to protect and look out there. The two-hander, like Novak, is just so efficient. He's just so efficient. And also, as you said, the opponents that Novak and Rafa have not exactly been particularly powerful. I mean, these aren't the most dangerous kinds of opponents. Whereas Alcaraz had a very dangerous one versus Romas Vinolas yesterday, right? That was very, very challenging. And Tsitsipas, I don't know. I think and Musetti, very also a good clay court kind of guy. So that's kind of the luck of the draw. I don't know what would have happened if Novak had played Musetti again, who last year had him down 2-0. But nonetheless, it's obviously important, like Amy said, in any slam, much less this, particularly this slam, to get through those early matches quickly.
Alcaraz is an alien, so I think he's going to be fine. But Tsitsipas really does need to. He needs a quick one. Next round, Michael Emer. Then things get tough. Like this will come back to hurt him, and then we could have a wide open bottom half if Tsitsipas doesn't start to recover and buck this trend. It's just the off days seem so few and far between sometimes with Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic through the years at the slams in these early rounds. I mean, it is just amazing how reliable they have made these stadium court matches snooze fests. You know, I mean,
Tsitsipas also wants to get himself off the night shift. He's
that
had
too.
2 of those, and I think he's going to say, "Okay, guys, I've done my quota for this year. Put me back on the day shift. Give me a Sunday afternoon. Give me a nice straight setter on Longland. I'm out of here. Good night."
Here's a question for you guys. And I despite having this my fourth RG, I don't know the answer to this because I don't pay that close attention to how they schedule. But will Djokovic and Nadal be on Chatrier now for the rest? Like no more Longland for them?
Have they each had a Longland?
Novak had Longland, right?
Novak has Longland, but Rafa has not. I don't know.
Yeah, but
right. I suspect it's always tricky when they're on the same half of the draw. That's the tricky thing because you've got days and you've got nights, and then it's like a series of choices. Would you rather have a day on Longland or a night on Chatrier? So
I just don't know if the Griffin Nadal, when the last time he's on Longland, or if it's just a Chatrier deal for him. I don't know.
He's had Longland. I mean, I have to look back, but I know he's often had at least one on Longland. It's just, and it's like, and by the way, it's funny when I'm sometimes at tournaments and this is a real inside the beltway stuff about court assignments. I don't think the players care a rip really too much about it. If it's one of those stadiums, too much. But I don't know, on the same half. Well, look, the half, then there's going to be their quarterfinal if they meet in the quarters. So that's obviously
Yeah,
shot.
that'll obviously, yeah.
And then they'll have some.
The reason I ask is we have tickets for Longland on Saturday, and we're trying to figure out like who will we see? Will we, have a shot of seeing those two guys? But I feel like it would probably Novak's probably done his duty on Longland.
But I'll say this: this tournament again. There are other matches in the jigsaw puzzle. If I'm Rafa or Novak, I'd say the tournament. You know what? I'll take a Longland over a night match. I need energy. I don't want to play. I want to play at this tournament in particular. I want to play as few night matches as possible. I mean, because that has sleep implications and all of that. So I would say to them, I don't care. I'll take a Moutet over a night match. Over playing.
Oh, the Moutet is the most charming court. I mean, I love Longland. That's one of my favorite courts in tennis. But Moutet is amazing what they've done. It's sad. It's just too small for those guys.
Oh no, those guys aren't going to plan it. But I just think for them, I think their team is saying to the tournament, "Hey, as things go on, I'll take a Longland, please." What do you think, Gil?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think they want to play at night, and I think that is Rafa during Rome was requesting day sessions. That was reported. So we knew how he felt over the course of that tournament, and I think Nadal knows that he needs to do either 1 or 2 night sessions. So I think he's glad to get it out of the way early in the tournament against a player like Moutet. So I agree with that, Joel. Next up for Djokovic is Aljaz Bedane. I'm always kind of tepid about his first name. I think it's Aljaz. I
always say Bedane, but I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong.
I think it's Bedane.
Okay.
So I don't have that much to say about Bedane. I do know that he is 1 in 22 against top 10 players in his career. And I've always just looked at him as a player who really struggles when he gets up to the elite level and isn't someone who's generally very dangerous. And he's played Novak once in Rome in 2017. Djokovic won 7-6, 6-2. Do you guys, they also played at the Australian Open in 2015. That was also straight sets for Djokovic. Any thoughts on Bedane or comments on his game?
I think I'm not so much concerned about him. I'm thinking about this is the stage after we've kind of gotten into the tournament. Now we enter Act 2 of the tournament. First 2 rounds are Act 1. Now we're in the 32 stage. So now we start to look for really signs of Novak's form, and maybe some of his versatility.
Do we though? Because he's playing Bedane. So I don't know.
This is where we look to see. I'm not saying Novak has to serve and volley 40 times, but I'm saying this is where we look to see, is Novak doing some of the things that are going to help him get on the path to winning the tournament? Not all of them, but just I talked about research and development in our last show. And this is where if there's a way, he knows he can play a certain kind of way and win this match fairly handily. But maybe is he going to just broaden it a little bit just to get a few more show of things? Because I have a hard time seeing him losing this match. But again, it's just a question of how drama-free he makes it for himself.
Yeah, I think Bedane he's underpowered a little bit. He will Novak, try to do some experimentation. I think this is, as I said last time, I think these rounds are the dog days of the tournament. And so the focus, if you're Novak, I think tends to dial up just a little bit. And I think he'll try to polish him off faster rather than take some time to experiment.
Oh no, I didn't think experiment. I think experiment can make it take less time. I didn't think experiment necessarily takes more time. It could maybe win some points faster.
Yeah, good point.
This is kind of like this is a fairly this would be like a staggering upset if he lost or even lost a set.
Yeah.
I mean, you said Bedane, it's like Berankis is an opponent like that. Some guys had a nice
Yeah,
career, but
I think I like Berankis a little bit more, just a little bit in terms of what he can do when he tries to get super offensive and redline his game.
Right.
You know, Bedane, he's solid off both wings and he hits the ball well, but he's very much like your stock pro, you know, stock like 50s ranked pro.
Like the ones Novak created. I mean, Novak has created kind of the template of how a lot of guys play tennis today. Nice, solid game, pretty good. I mean, look, he's a pro. He's a great player in the third round of a major.
Right.
But now you're up against the great, you know, big time 20 slam winner.
Van de Zandschulp for Nadal, someone who's made a lot more noise during the clay court season, had a great run in Munich, where he made the final and had to retire, unfortunately, in that final. But he beat Ruud and he beat Kecmanovic, and he beat Fognini in straight sets in the previous round. He's the world number 29. So now this is your more typical third round opponent, I would say, where, okay, you get a seed, and Van de Zandschulp is a pretty strong seed in my estimation, and also someone who has been really good best of 5, generally speaking, in his young career. Amy, I know you and I both said before the draw came out that he was a guy in Nadal's section.
Yeah, we called that one. And to me, this one says danger, Will Robinson, because this guy has been playing really well. He's great on clay, good mentality, calm under pressure, good serve, good spot server. You know, observing Nadal the other night, I was reminded of how well he volleys and how he sees the opportunity to come forward and volley a lot faster than the average bear on tour. So I would definitely give Nadal the edge in that category over Botic. But I think he's going to need to volley in this match to close out the points and take command pretty quickly within the rallies.
Yeah, there are going to be some really good. This is going to be a really good match, and I'm not saying it's going to be a 5-setter. It might even be a straight setter, but it's going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting points, and then we're going to see the way Nadal has kind of over the course of his reign in Paris redefined what clay court excellence is. You know, this is my search for the transcendent offense defense. It's like, what is Nadal doing out there? That is just unbelievable. The movement, the starting to return from a seemingly classically defensive position, but then quickly grabbing into the point, and he's going to be playing an opponent who's got a lot of tools. I mean, that's a pretty good group of people he beat recently.
Yeah, Van de Zandschulp doesn't crush the ball, but he's got fantastic movement. He doesn't look fast, but he's super fast, and I don't know where it comes from, because he just looks like a normal guy who you wouldn't maybe even spot as a professional athlete. But he's super fast. He's very consistent. He defends his backhand well. He's got enough juice on the forehand to do damage when he has the chance to do it. The one thing he doesn't really do very well is serve. The technique is strange. It doesn't help him out much. And I think that's one of the reasons why the clay is nice for him, because he can get into plenty of return games to make up for the fact that sometimes he's going to be broken because his serve isn't helping him out much. But he's a really, really tough player from the baseline.
Well, Nadal, though, that's good. That's helpful for him, because Nadal is a consistent returner. He's not necessarily a punishing returner. He's a consistent returner. And again, what you described about, let's see, doesn't seem like a professional athlete, doesn't hit the ball that hard, seems to get there. Yeah, that strikes me as a keen student of the game. You know, that his game is a greater than some of his parts, and he understands how to create points. Very interesting. That's very edifying. I think pointing to our recreational angle, this match is a learning opportunity. This is different. The Novak match is going to be watching someone who's playing a Novak who does a lot of the same things all better. And I think that's going to be no matter what happens, that's what we're going to kind of see. Whereas this match is going to be, this is a whole different kind of matchup.
And keep an eye on Nadal's turn position. I was looking at that the other night, and I tweeted that it was not, I thought it was maybe a step and a half in from his usual Timbuktu. So I don't know why, but he's turning well, and he knows what he's doing out there. But he was climbing that ladder just a little bit quicker than he normally does because of his closer return position.
And maybe that's because, you know, Moutet is a pretty slow server, and he felt, okay, I don't need the extra time. Let me step in and be a little bit more offensive. And maybe he could do the same thing against Botic, who serves a little bit bigger than Moutet, but again, still not very big. It's gonna be hard work though, because again, BVDZ, a great scrambler, really doesn't miss a lot. You like the initials, really doesn't miss a lot, has a lot of skill, just moves the ball around nicely, constructs points, as you were saying, Joel. Should be a fun one. Djokovic, Bedane, Nadal against Botic as we move towards round 3. And Amy, enjoy the rest of the time in Paris.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.